Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tonka Talk. I'm Natalie. We talk about all things community and connection. Today, my guest, his name is synonymous with Twin Cities Fashion. He's a creative behind Grant Whittaker Creative, a fashion consulting and production company. Welcome, Grant Whittaker.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm really happy to see you. I met Grant some years ago at My Talk because you're a regular on Shop Girls.
I am, and been filling in a little bit for Laura and Joya, so that's fun.
And you are involved in so many different things around the Twin Cities. If you get a chance, you have to go through his website and make sure you follow him on social. It's hard to even pare down. Fashionopolis, so many things. You do a show at the Lafayette Country Club. I've looked at all this. I've seen you work. I've admired it for years. And I've always wondered, because I knew you were from Germany, how does that happen?
You know, it's interesting. I moved from Germany in 2000 and I landed in Chicago, and I was working for an agency, and I started my career also as a dancer. That was part of it, part of the creativity. And the agency called and said, look, we have a casting that we would love to see you go to. It's for something called Fash Bash, which became Glamorama, which was the Dayton Hudson Marshall Field show. And I went to that and did an audition, and 2 hours later got a job. And then you rehearse here in the Twin Cities for a week, and the show traveled from Minneapolis to Detroit to Chicago. And after that, I met someone who was a creative director of that show and had been, and was a massive force in the Twin Cities. And we began a love affair, and then that brought me to the cities. And then there I came with my books and my portfolios and the work that I had done. And yeah, that's where it started.
Wow. Now, you grew up in Germany?
I did. Yeah. I grew up in Heidelberg, Germany. My mom was from a town called Mannheim. I speak English and German.
Wow.
Ich kann entweder Deutsch oder Englisch sprechen. I always speak German because I don't have an accent. So I don't have an accent when I speak either language, just because my father was in the American military. My mom was German. So we spoke both languages in the home all the time. And so English at school, German, everywhere else.
Wow, that's really great. I took German in high school because I wanted to. Do you remember the band Nina?
I do.
99 Red Balloons.
Yes.
Y'all remember?
Yep.
The B-side is why I took German in high school, because it was all in German.
Right. Yeah. And there were the 80s brought a lot of it was Nina and Kraftwerk, and there were a lot of really great kind of German bands. Germany is also the second biggest market for music in the world.
Wow, I did not know that.
So all your house music, all those things. So when I started as a dancer, that's kind of how I got into it, because house music, club music, all that stuff was coming out of there.
Wow. How do you go about doing all of the things you do? It's such a creative industry. So much of what you do, that's why I keep saying, if you're not familiar with Grant Whittaker, you need to dive into his work. You need to do a deep dive. There's so much creativity there. It's you take something that just on its own would be like, well, that would be great, but you elevate it in a way that just gives it that complete wow factor. That takes a lot of energy, and you've done it for such a long time. What really drives you? What gives you the passion to want to continue to do this type of work?
Creative people are all around. I mean, and creativity kind of flows through all different types of people. I started my work as an artist and as a dancer, and really was so interested in how does one do that, and how do you put it together, and what's the production aspect, and who are the people behind the scenes. And so I was always a quick study, and I had the opportunity at 19, Goldwell Hair Company. There was a really, really famous hairdresser, and I got to do a show for them. And I always say this, I remember being behind the scenes going, I've got this great concept and we're ready to go. And we were rehearsing, but there were certain elements that I couldn't figure out. And I had to take 10 minutes and figure it out. And in that moment, I think you realize that you were creative, but I was super organized. I knew how to organize things. And that's my strength, is going into something and going, here's the creativity, here's the organization, let's put together the team. I think at a certain point, we either know if we're leaders or not. I consider myself a good leader because I care about projects. I care about people. I care about what we're going to do. And And ultimately, and I mean, it's my business slogan, but it's true and it's authentic. It's we dream in color. So I think if you're not lacking in color and you're really thinking about what are the aspects of color and how can I teach somebody to love color, or how can I give them a concept or multiple concepts that go, here's what we can do. And, you know, that's the nice thing, I think, when you do understand color is, and you drive with that, is you get an opportunity to work with people and they pick and choose what they like from it. You're not dictating to them. You're going, here's imagination and here's a world. And I was always a kid who had a lot of imagination. I lost a sister when I was 10 years old. She died of meningitis. And when that happens in a family environment, sometimes your imagination is the only thing you kind of have, truthfully.
That is so true. When you're doing this type of work, especially coming from somewhere else, moving here from Chicago, and then even when you moved from Germany, has this been a way for you to kind of create community? You know, we talk a lot on Tonka Talk about community and connection. Is this a way you found to kind of create a community, find a community?
You know, Minneapolis is a cosmopolitan city, and there were so many things here. I was also really drawn to Minneapolis because, you know, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities, you know, all of us phrase it in different ways. But, you know, that first entrance for me was really rooted in Minneapolis, like Stone Arch Bridge. There I was. And I grew up in a city where there was this beautiful old bridge. Heidelberg is a very touristy town, and all of a sudden there was this bridge, and I thought, God, this feels like somewhere I could belong. And when I got here as a creative and I went to the agencies or I called certain people or did certain things, it was really interesting because everybody kept saying, oh, you should move to New York or LA. The stuff that you do, they do there. We kind of don't do that here. And so it took a while for me to really figure that out. And I started a store window business. It was called Taste Agency. I worked with clients like Kim Samela and Bella Pak, and, you know, Greg Walsh, who now owns Martin Patrick 3, had Inside Design. You know, I was working behind the scenes as a freelancer doing things in the Dayton Hudson, furniture area, like working with furniture and home interiors. That was always a really great interest of mine. And so it was an opportunity to build another outlook of what I really enjoyed and what I enjoyed doing. And so when you're doing those things, you understand not only the color, you understand the merchandising aspect and how does one build, what sells, what doesn't sell. I was seeing luckily things that I was putting in windows and building kind of like these little imaginary sets and people going, I want that, I want that, I want that. And so that was really kind of a fun way. But, you know, when you talk about community, I think it's hard. You know, I am creative. I'm gay. I am fashionable, you know, all of those different things. And so you kind of stand out in your own community, meaning like in your gay community a little bit because you're sometimes a little bit of an anomaly. And then you have a creative background. So for me, my community started, I was also a company member of a company called Ballet of the Dolls. And so I was dancing there, meeting people, building a business. So I had all these different outlets where I was starting to get to know people. Yeah. And then ultimately, in talking about me and like what I do and all those things, it was my voice that brought me further. Someone said, hey, do you want to come on TV and talk? You've got like this great skill for explaining things and talking about things. And I knew I loved that. And I had done a little bit of that. At one point, I thought I was going to be a video VJ in Germany. But that kind of just changed. I mean, ultimately, I had to leave Germany just because I was an American citizen. And I was born during a time period where you didn't have dual citizenship. And unfortunately, I just didn't want to go in the German military. I didn't have a great experience when I met with those people.
So you considered that at one point?
I did. I considered that. And then I walked into a situation where, as a gay guy, you know, I was told I could do some things for someone in like a sexual manner to get myself out of it. And it really just freaked me out. And so
to get out of going into the military, was it mandatory?
It is. You have to do some kind of civil service and be mandatory. And like I was trying to find ways of getting out of it, like saying I didn't speak German and things like that. And so ultimately they realized that. And so someone basically said, You want to have a good time with me? I can get you out of this.
Wow.
And so, things like that happen. And I think we have to talk about those things too, because it's just, I'm an adult, and like there are kids and there are things. And so it freaked me out. And I left my home. I left my work. I left my creativity, everything behind that I knew.
Yeah.
And so it was also an opportunity to want to leave and start something, but doesn't mean it's easy. Creating community is not hard. But then I think ultimately you do, because either you're good at what you do, not good at what you do. But then there's also that side of, that's just the work side of things. It's also like the personal side of things. And so, I don't know, I like people. And I love what I do. And that's my favorite thing in what I do, is like working with people and seeing the outcome and that make wonder outcome.
Yeah. I could totally see that, there being a lot of magic when you're working with somebody as a stylist in whatever capacity in fashion. How do you help them find their style or their personal style? It's not one look that you do and create. When I've seen your work, how do you connect with that person? And when they don't know, like I've often thought my sister's much more into clothing and what they wear, and I'm into it because it's required.
Right. Yes, we do have to get dressed.
We have to get dressed. But it's not something that I have a lot of affinity about. If there was a world and a scenario where I could just walk around every day in pajamas, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. I think I would go
you
to
probably could.
Yeah.
Hugh Hefner did.
You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I think
and
you're
maybe
onto
we need
something.
like an empowered woman to do the same thing,
Exactly. And I'm sure there's probably more clothing or types of clothing that kind of could give me that feel of comfort and flow that I like about my pajamas. The second I get home, those pajamas go on. I would literally walk around like that. But how do you help somebody figure that out, what their style is? Because it doesn't seem like you go in and go, okay, here's the trends. You should wear this. You're cultivating it in a different way.
Yeah. Like, I think even to your point in saying, like, look, I like the touch and feel of this kind of fabric or this kind of thing when I get home. That's my comfort level. The thing is, you could play that into every day. You really could. It really comes down to, is it a certain designer that carries that kind of look? Is there a certain fabric, a certain aesthetic? And then it comes down to also what's going to work on you and your body. And so like in working with people, whether it's personal styling, building a show, any of the things that I have to do, because I am lucky because there are not a lot of people like me that get the opportunity to style the looks, produce the show, create the video, do the backdrops, do it all.
Yeah.
And the styling part is the biggest part because that's ultimately what you're selling. It is. And so in working on that, you don't want to guide like anyone in a direction. You want them to come to you and say, what's out there that appeals to you? And then as a tool in my work, in my business, I go, okay, let's think about that. I have a worksheet and by worksheet, I mean, it's a one pager. Who are your style icons? Like, what colors do you like? What colors do you not like? Let's talk about your body. What do you like? What do you don't like? Because it is those things that you have to start with. They're basics. Because if I throw something at you and you don't tell me what you like about yourself, not like about yourself, colors you like, you're not involved in the process. You need to be involved. It's you. It's not me. And I say that to people all the time. I dress a certain way that meets me. Some of it involves the fact of being authentic. I got to build my self-esteem in my process. What's my process to get out the door so that I know that I can talk about what I do and I can present myself as a stylist? So the other component of that is when you make it personal for someone and someone knows that you're talking to them about them, it's a really great way to start the process. And then everything comes and develops. Basic aesthetics that I always focus on is, let's maybe show your waist a little bit. Let's maybe highlight the things that are good for you. Let's curate your shape. And by curate, I mean really curate it for you. What colors, what basics, what fabrics, what's comfortable, what's going to be within your budget, what's going to last. That's the personal side. And a fashion show side, it's all about the look, the outfit, the aesthetic, because everyone's going to pick and choose what they like. And nobody really knows sometimes what they like.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you put the look together, somebody goes, ooh, I really like the look. Or no, I just like the coat. Ooh, I love the shoes. It's all the things that you have to make like more of an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Your work is it's much more intimate hearing you describe it as I would have thought. And I can really see that. And talking to you, it makes sense to me now more too, how you're able to, if you couldn't connect to people in a really authentic and true way, you wouldn't have the reputation, the work, the jobs, the things that you are doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And when it comes to fashion and style, and we all walk around and we present ourselves a certain way, that is such an intimate process. And I love too being yourself. You know, like you were saying, when you dress yourself, to be able to present yourself as somebody who styles, who does fashion, who produces shows. How fun is that? Do you find being able to play around with these different looks and experimenting with wardrobe or with shows? Is there an element of, is it more for you at this point? Is it just, it's work and of course it's creative? Is it something that's still kind of fun? Do you ever get nervous?
There's never a moment where it can't be fun. I mean, I think if I wasn't having fun, I shouldn't do what I was doing.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I'm trying to inspire other people to have fun and be themselves and not be afraid to be themselves or not be afraid to be authentic or speak up or certain things. You know, like I have great mentors that I worked for, people who really owned their craft and people that I learned a lot from. And, you know, at certain points when you stand behind the scenes, I consider myself to be pretty friendly. I am German. So sometimes you are a little direct. You just go, hey, this is the way I want it. Doesn't mean I don't like someone. It just means we have to work in a certain line. Because the thing is, I'm trying to tell a story. It's typically an editorial story, whether it's fashion, an event, experiential, any of those things. You're telling a story. And so, you know, in doing that, the fun elements, of course, are always there. I think there are a lot of, I love to say this to people because fashion is really hard work. Events, color, trend, those things, it's really hard work because you have to sell a story. You have to be able to tell the story. You also have to be able to creatively put it together, know when to edit, when not to edit, and be able to co-collaborate. I mean, you really do. And sometimes when you get to a certain age and you're creative, you go, I really want this idea. How am I going to get us there? Because I know this is right. And typically now in these days, it just comes authentically because you're not trying to be forceful and you're not trying to force anything on someone. You're just trying to create a great end product. And the myth, I think, around fashion is that it just kind of happens. It's a lot of work. I mean, there are days I do a multitude of things. Sometimes I'm just a stage manager. Sometimes it's my project. Sometimes I'm just behind the scenes educating people. I do a lot of education because you can't just go to college to do what I do. You can't. And so those creative outlets don't exist. I mean, I've been an executive at an ad agency. I've done a multitude of things, but it's an interesting facet to kind of look back and go, okay, here's where we are. I want to teach people to inspire and I want them to come and be colorful and understand these things. But yes, it is a lot of fun, but no one should be not aware that it's really hard work.
Definitely. I can definitely see that. And you can see that even in the shows and the events that you do. If someone wanted to, if they were thinking about, you know what, I would love to be in fashion. One of the things that I'm sure comes up in a lot of, in anything you do creatively, in a creative ways, or when you're putting yourself out there, there's a level of criticism that's going to come with that. And you've withstood, because I'm making an assumption that you've had some criticism. I'm not aware of any.
Yeah.
That can be intimidating, especially to somebody who's kind of up and coming and they're interested in doing this and they have a lot of that drive and creativity. What advice would you give them when it comes to putting yourself out to that level and being able to deal with at times criticism?
Well, I think creativity is one of the things that you have to just put out there. You just have to put it out there. And some people are going to like it. Some people are not going to like it. Some people are going to like some style elements. They're not going to like them all. Some people might be weirded out. And I think the one thing that I would say to anyone young is do the following. You know, granted, we can go online and we can look at anything and everything in front of us. But sometimes we forget that we can also go to a bookstore and we can just open the pages and turn to a page, and it just is a different flow of things. It just resonates sometimes clearer. And
See, look at this. You're even elevating the bookstore experience. I'm like, I want to go to a bookstore and turn pages.
But like, I used to love going, you know, like when you grow up in a military environment, you would go, we had the bookstore was called the Stars and Stripes. That was the newspaper, and you would go and there would just be all of the magazines and all the books, and you would walk around and you would just open them and look. Or I would go to Barnes and Noble and open the most amazing, like, non-affordable coffee table books. You know, you realize it's all, you can look at it. No one's going to say you can't look at it. And those are the things that I would say to anyone that's interested in know the players, know the people, do your research. Think about this person's doing that, I'm doing that. Look at the people who compete. Just because we know a brand, it doesn't mean that Donatella wasn't competing with Karl Lagerfeld or, you know, Thierry Mugler was not competing with Azzedine Alaïa. I mean, all of these people had their own sense of things. And then it also comes down to what's marketable. And I say this all the time too, because fashion is what inspires what I do. I mean, I do a bevy of things. I do events, and we do lighting, and I do all of those things. Everything is pretty much production based, but fashion is just such a thing that we pick our art forms. That was my art form that like inspired me, and it made me aware, and it was like an innovator. So I think the thing that people kind of also need to remember about that is with fashion in particular, you know, if it was like such a moneymaker, I always say like Chanel would not have a perfume. You know, it's like everybody just thinks that fashion just pays and pays and pays, and it doesn't. There's so much that goes into it. So
what do you see yourself doing in the next 5-10 years? Have you thought about it?
I have. I'm thinking about it a lot. I have knocked down, you know, not to like be like Debbie Downer, but like I recently lost my mom. And so my mom was like, kind of like this very hard German gal, you know, but like her style and her aesthetics and her wardrobe. And like, I always say to people, like, she was a housewife. So, I mean, girlfriend would get up in the morning and she would clean the house. And it would be like her aerobics routine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like at like 11 or noon, she would go and take a shower. And by the time she came out of the bathroom, you were like, oh my God, she looks like a supermodel.
Wow.
And it was such an amazing thing to kind of watch. And as a kid, and like just that process. And I've kind of adapted to that too. So when my mom passed, I had tried to get into a very particular agency for a long time. And then all of a sudden I got a call. And it happened through me speaking to somebody and doing somebody a favor. And the world is so small. That's why it's good to be nice to people. And then all of a sudden I had a very brilliant conversation. And so I know that's going to lead to some headway. I am going home, meaning back to Germany, and I will spend some time in Amsterdam. And it's an opportunity now for me to go back and say to the people that I grew up with who are doing their own things, some of them running great agencies. I left to get away to do this. Now look what I've done. So now it's an opportunity to go, hey, let's play. And, you know, owning your own business, you know, it was Grant Whittaker Style. Now it's Grant Whittaker Creative, you know, and it's a business, but it's really based on hiring the experts, like expert lighting designers, expert sound people. You know, I have a crew of people that work with me on shows that are producers, people, all of those things. You know, I'm in a position right now where I pick and choose who I would like to work with as a team. There's some of those people. I have a very great model that works with me all the time. I like to shout her out. Her name is Hannah. I love her. But I've also said to her, when you get to be my age, you need to be me. You need to be me. This is why we're doing this. And I pay her well and I honor her. But, you know, it's all those things that you think about. And I'm in a position right now where I want to be more of a team player. I don't want to be like human resources and development and all of those things all the time, because you build a name sometimes and it's like a name is just a name. It's like what you do with that is really up to you, and your reputation is up to you. And so the only reason people know me is because I work hard, and I'm really truthful about that. I work my butt off.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, someone who's watching this who would want to get into fashion, it's such a great way to express yourself and to not even have to be a certain way all of the time. It can be changed. That's something that I had to kind of wrap my head around too, is you don't, because you have one look when you're 20, that doesn't need to be your look at 25 or 30. And vice versa. It can be all over the place. When you're working with people, I would imagine it has to be very gratifying to help them put things together, whether it's for a show or it's one-on-one styling, and help them get to the point with their wardrobe where they feel really good about it and confident. And it puts them in a mindset to be able to go out and just conquer. What is that like to be able to do that for so many people?
You talk all things community, and it's like giving someone a sense of creative community and giving someone a sense of, in some cases, profound confidence or just a little self-esteem. Because I think if we can hone our self-esteem, our confidence, all those things, it does make us better people. I know I've had to do the work. And when I think also what makes me so good at my work is, and I'll just be really honest, I was a really fat kid. I then danced and thought my body was the bomb. And then I went the other direction and was an anorexic. And now I'm in a place where like, I just focus on the health of everything.
Yeah.
And so like, there just are no airs in that sense. 'Cause like you see it all. Like now you see people and you see what they're going through, and you can just know it because you've dealt with it. And so it's such a great place to go, okay, yeah, I see you. I get that. Let's do this. Let's see this. That's great. And then when you see somebody come out and because clothing can be almost like your little superhero, and when you see someone elevated or looking at something, or somebody goes, "Ooh, I loved what you showed. I bought this. I bought this. I bought that." And in terms of, there's that personal style community and that feel good factor that that you can home with people. But then the other part of that is that existence then is going to lead to positivity. The better quality, just in terms of community, is also knowing that you're honoring your vendors and the people you work with. It's my favorite thing when I walk into after a show that's mine, or you've started a new project, or it's philanthropy driven, that either the money's made, but then you go back to the stores and they go, "Yep, you showed that, sold that, did this." It's my favorite thing because it means that ultimately, without sometimes even knowing, you're supporting people.
I love that. There's just so much there. I told him earlier before we started, I said, I think I could talk to you for hours. You have such a great perspective about it. And I hope that one day, whether it's through some type of a show or your own podcast, a book, I just feel like there's so much more to this story. There's stories within stories. And I hope that you continue to share that. You're able to see something it's almost like when I think about it like this, like you can see layers, almost a different dimension that other people can't see. And you pull that out with the work that you do, and then people can see it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that relates to theme. I think about a theme when I think about a person, when I think about an event, when I think about anything that I do. Even when you're working with like a startup brand, for example, I've curated a lot of like startup brands and tried to find style and dimension. I've worked with music artists and said, okay, let's figure out what that style is. Because you don't want a gimmick. A gimmick only goes so far. It just really does. And you can't afford, I think as people, we can't afford to be gimmicky. Like, my favorite thing is when people stop me and go, "Oh, I love what you're wearing. I love that." I mean, I was like literally walking across the street of like the Twin Cities the other day, coming across from the Hewing Hotel, and it was all black and white. And I knew the outfit was the bomb. And it was kind of like fly white pimp daddy. like really good. And literally people rolling down the windows. You better work that outfit. I love that. And that's always like the best thing anyways. And I always have like, I was a dancer and a background dancer too. Like I knew how to drop it like it was hot. I was always like the white boy that could dance. So I'm still, there's always a little soul, I think, that comes in. And it's just funny because your style, trends, all of those things, it really needs to embody what feels timeless for you. And it needs to be like, because I preach color can come in a lot of different things. You can think about aura sometimes. You can think about you and how you resonate, like meaning from skin tone, all of those things in a color. You can think about the colors and things that you like. You can think about like, how is that going to play maybe in terms of destination or where I'm going or what my work is. All of those things, because the truth is none of us really know what we like. We just see all these different things. And like, I always tell people, like, I was really inspired by pop culture. I was like, when I was really young, like, I mean, literally like first grade, and there's MTV popping on the screen and I was glued. I mean, I just didn't move. And so there's a certain genre, I think, that I always apply to my wardrobe that feels a little like MTV culture. Like, oh, this look and that look and this look. But not everybody is that. And so my tip to people is find the thing that feels good for you. And if you don't know what that is, because a lot of people don't, I always say to people, you can go in any store and try on the most expensive thing. Doesn't mean you have to buy it. No one's going to stop you from trying it on. Put it on, see how it feels. Your body's going to do this mind memory thing, and I'm a coat person. Doesn't mean I haven't gone into any and every boutique and tried on this coat and that coat. Doesn't mean I can afford it all. I find it because I know what it feels like and what it looks like. And that is the tip is don't forget, when we're young, we're taught about like touch and feel and smell and all those things. And that's what really should resonate with you in terms of your personal style.
I absolutely love that. Cannot thank you enough for coming and sharing. Definitely find Grant. Where are the best places for people to connect with you?
It's easy. I am Grant W Creative on Instagram, and great way to be authentic in color. But, I'm like, just like anyone, you put in Grant Whittaker Creative. Yep. There's a lot of good stuff that comes up. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody else, thanks for listening to Tonka Talk, and I will talk to you later.